Meanwhile, President Trump giving Attorney General Barr the authority to declassify documents related to FBI surveillance of his campaign in 2016. The president has accused the Bureau of spying, calling its actions treasonous. Here's former Deputy Independent Counsel Saul Weisenberg earlier.
I think probably at the end of the day, very few people are going to be tried, and we shouldn't want our opponents to go to prison unless they've actually violated the criminal law. So let's just get the facts and have an honest broker get to the bottom of it.
All right, so joining us now, Chris Wallace, anchor of Fox News Sunday. Chris, good morning to you. So,
morning to you, Sandra.
What do you think happens with this now that the president's given Barr authority to access all of this?
Yeah, I mean, there were two parts to the declaration yesterday. One was an order that all of the intelligence agencies needed to cooperate with Attorney General Barr's investigation, and two, that he has the right to declassify anything he wants. I have to agree with Saul Weisenberg. You know, there are millions of Americans who think the big story here is that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians. Well, after 22 months of investigation, we found out that wasn't true, according to the special counsel. There are millions of Americans who think the big story here is that there was improper activity, abuse of power by members of the FBI and other intelligence agencies to try to sink Donald Trump during the campaign. Now we're going to have an investigation to find out whether that's true, and let the chips fall where they may. Let's find out what the facts are.
So we will, and we'll see if it gets to the bottom of it.
Chris, amen to that last point. Fox News alert, we've confirmed President Trump has approved the Pentagon's plan to send about 2,000 more U.S. troops to the Middle East. That follows a national security meeting in the White House Situation Room moments ago. 8 minutes past. Another alert right now from overseas. This is the news we woke up to today.
I will shortly leave the job that it has been the honour of my life to hold. The second female Prime Minister, but certainly not the last. I do so with no ill will, but with enormous and enduring gratitude to have had the opportunity to serve the country I love.
That is major news from London. Theresa May, her voice breaking, announcing she will step down from her post as Prime Minister after failing to get a Brexit deal approved by Parliament. She tried 3 times and failed to get it done.
Fox News now confirming that President Trump has approved a Pentagon plan to send roughly 2,000 more troops to the Middle East. This as newly declassified intelligence shows Iran is running short on cash as tighter U.S. sanctions deal a blow to Iran's economy. Rich Edson's live at the State Department this morning for us. Rich, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Sandra. And State Department officials say that this newly declassified intelligence shows Iran is having a difficult time funding militias across the Middle East. Officials say that Tehran has told Shia militias to find new revenue sources because Iran will provide them less money. Hamas has enacted austerity plans because of funding shortfalls from Iran, that Iran's cyber command needs cash, and an Assad regime fuel shortage because the U.S. has cut off 1 to 3 million barrels a month that Iran once supplied to the Syrian government. Hezbollah has also deployed a social media campaign, including children in military uniforms, to encourage donations to piggy banks. The State Department says this all demonstrates 26 rounds of sanctions on nearly 1,000 targets is working.
The president would like to get into negotiations with the Iranian regime so that he can put in place a new and better deal to replace the failed Iran nuclear deal. But while we're working on that objective, we're also denying Iran the revenue it needs to destabilize the Middle East.
A year ago, the Trump administration withdrew from the Iran nuclear agreement. Since then, the U.S. has restored sanctions on Iranian oil, banking, and exports. Some Democrats and European governments have criticized the withdrawal from the nuclear deal, saying it would further destabilize an already volatile region and encourage Iran to restart its nuclear program. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani has warned and given European governments less than 2 months to help shield Iran from these American sanctions. If not, he says that his country will resume producing highly enriched uranium. Sandra?
All right, Rich Hudson at the State Department. Rich, thanks.
Very intriguing report. I want to bring in former White House National Security spokesperson Michael Anton. Michael, how you doing? And welcome back.
Great, thanks.
Here, what about this money report that Rich is talking there with Iran?
It's highly encouraging. I mean, that's one of the things that you enact sanctions to do, which is starve hostile regimes of the resources that they need to fuel hostility. Iran has been Iran prefers to fight through proxies. It doesn't like direct conflict. It prefers indirect conflict. And the way it pursues indirect conflict is by paying people, paying groups around the region to put up these fights. And when it has less money, it has less resources to fuel conflict, and the risk of war and casualties and terrorist attacks and all of those horrible things goes down. And that's, to me, is exactly what these sanctions are designed to do. And it's great to see that they're working.
You believe the plan is working, then? That's clearly what you're saying there.
Yeah, based on those reports, definitely.
At the same time, you have this order to send up to 2,000 more troops to the Middle East. Peter King was with us about 2 hours ago. His reflection on that first, Michael, watch.
It's one of these deals that you may never know whether it's successful or not, because success means not being attacked. And it's hard to tell if there was an attack going to be planned. From what I understand of the intelligence, I believe they have planned attacks. So far, they haven't occurred. So I say so far, so good.
Critics of this believe that you're just stoking the fears of war, or the flames of war. What Peter King is arguing is that this is the ultimate deterrent, Michael. What's your view?
I agree with that, and I would put this in context. I think it's widely known that one of the great successes of the Trump administration so far is the defeat of ISIS, something the president promised and has mostly delivered on. What is less widely known is that that was accomplished almost entirely by allied and foreign forces, Syrians, Kurds, Arab forces, with U.S. troops in the background in a supporting role, not in a frontline role, taking very, very low casualties over the course of that period. That was an extremely effective way to use a small U.S. presence at low risk to get very big gains. And if we could continue doing that, not getting the U.S. into direct conflict, direct wars like we did in Iraq in 2003, using a much smaller presence to enable a foreign force on the ground to do the heavy lifting and the tough fighting, that to me has already shown to be a success. And if it can continue, that would be very good for our interests.
A health emergency at a migrant shelter in San Diego, now dealing with a flu outbreak there. Doctors identifying more than a dozen potential cases. Alicia Cunha has this story. It's been a growing problem for a while now, Alicia.
It has, Sandra, and the medical team at the San Diego facility has now confirmed 3 cases of influenza. The health department there says that conditions are ripe for it to spread fast.
All it takes is 2 individuals with flu-like symptoms, at least one who's been confirmed with the flu in 3 days, to have an outbreak. Because we know that people in close quarters can easily spread the flu from one person to another, we took immediate action.
Authorities say migrants with flu symptoms were flown from Texas to other stations, including that one in San Diego, due to overcrowding in the larger facilities in Texas shelters.
We are taking all appropriate steps that we can to contain this outbreak at this facility and to protect the public's health in San Diego.
Now, the Border Patrol stopped these relocations briefly this week after a 16-year-old boy from Guatemala died after being diagnosed with the flu. Sandra?
And Alicia, the Border Patrol is now sharing results of a partnership to fight crime with Mexico. So what can you tell us about that?
Right. The U.S. Customs and Border Patrol has released the results of a 4-day binational operation with Mexican law enforcement at the Arizona border. According to the Border Patrol, agents in the Tucson sector and helicopter crews worked with Mexico's federal police force raiding scout sites located in the mountain areas on the Mexican side. Together, they say they destroyed a poppy field near the U.S. border and announced the seizure of 250 pounds of narcotics, assault weapons, communications equipment, 19 smugglers, including 6 linked to crime organizations. In a statement, the chief patrol agent in Tucson said the disruption of endeavors by dangerous criminal organizations who profit from the misery of others will always be one of the enforcement goals of Tucson sector. And Sandra, U.S. Border Patrol says this kind of collaboration with Mexico keeps people safe on both sides.
It is the West Coast city known for its natural beauty, but critics argue living conditions in Seattle are only getting worse. They argue police are looking the other way when it comes to drug dealers and camping out on city streets. Dan Springer lives there. He's live in Seattle with more on this story now. Dan.
Hey, Bill. In an effort to make Seattle more just for certain minorities and poor people, leaders have stopped enforcing several laws and routine policies. It's against the law to camp in public, but you'd never know it because thousands of people are living in tents. Drug possession is still a crime, but the city prosecutor won't charge people if they have a gram or less, so cops won't bother making arrests for using drugs in the open. After a library audit found people of color and the poor were getting locked out of their accounts more frequently than whites for not paying their late fines, the city decided to eliminate the fines. But since that will drop revenue, voters are being asked to pass a $213 million library levy. Officials say the fines are not about personal responsibility.
Fines don't teach responsibility. They just distinguish people with money from those without.
Seattle Public Schools found racial disparity in kids getting suspended, so this year it did away with suspensions at elementary schools and could extend that to older students next year. And after learning that the poor and homeless were being disproportionately impacted by bus fare enforcement, King County Metro just changed the policy. Getting caught dodging a fare and then not paying your fine is no longer a misdemeanor. Officials say they rarely collect from the indigent anyway. Critics say it puts taxpayers on the hook for bad behavior and divides people along racial lines.
It seems to be the more check boxes you have in terms of which category you fit into, that makes you more important. And that's not equity for anybody.
Voters will decide in the fall if they like the city's direction or want to return to more accountability. Almost every council seat is up for grabs.